It is a natural process that every organism should exchange materials and energy with its environment, and this exchange ultimately occurs at the cellular level. This phenomenon allows every living organism to survive. Today, we will be discussing the exchange that occur in living organisms. Take a breath in and try to hold it, and then let it out. Humans, when they are not exerting themselves, breathe approximately 15 times per minute on average. This equates to about 900 breaths an hour, or 21,600 breaths per day. With every inhalation, air fills the lungs, and with every exhalation, it rushes back out. That air is doing more than just inflating and deflating the lungs in the chest cavity. But how does the air flow in and out of our body? Gas exchange is the uptake of molecular oxygen from the environment and the discharge of carbon dioxide to the environment. Take note that every organism, meaning both plants and animals, are involved in this vital process or cycle. Carbon dioxide must be released to prevent physiological pH in tissues from being very acidic. In plants, however, the carbon dioxide that is released as a byproduct of cellular respiration may again be taken up for the process of photosynthesis. There are 5 basic principles that influence gas exchange. First, the crucial part that we must take note is that the respiratory surface or organ is the part of an animal's body where gases are exchanged with the environment must be moist, large enough, and protected from desiccation or extreme dryness. Second, the organism's respiratory systems rely on the diffusion of gases down pressure gradients. Fick's law states that the amount of diffusion of a gas across a membrane is proportional to the surface area and the difference in partial pressure between the two sides, and inversely proportional to the thickness of the membrane. Third is the surface to volume ratio. As an animal grows, the surface area increases at a lesser rate than its volume, making diffusion of gases into the interior more difficult, which means that animals must have a body design that keeps internal cells close to the surface, for instance flatworms, or must have a system to move the gases inward. Next, ventilation. Ventilation refers to the movement of the respiratory medium, either air or water, over the respiratory surface. In the case of bony fish, they move the gill covers for water-carrying oxygen to flow across the gill. However, in humans, they move the muscles of the thorax to expand and contract the chest cavity and move air in and out of the lungs. And lastly, the respiratory pigments or proteins. Adaptations of animals for gas exchange include respiratory pigments that bind and transport gases. The respiratory pigment of vertebrates is hemoglobin, while that of invertebrates, such as arthropods and mollusks, is hemocyanin. In plants, gas exchange occurs in the stomata, lenticels in stems, root hairs in aerial roots, pneumatophores, or the lateral roots of mangroves. Respiratory surfaces or organs in invertebrates. There are 4 main surfaces or organs that invertebrates use to respire. First, cell surface or cell membrane, which is found in unicellular organisms. 2. Integumentary exchange. Commonly found in worms and amphibians, they use their skin or body surface to breathe. 3. External gills, used by invertebrates that live in aquatic habitats such as crayfish, lobster, sea stars, and the like. They have gills that are highly folded, thin-walled, vascularized epidermis that project outward from their body. And fourth, the tracheal system in arthropods such as insects and spiders,
wherein they utilize fine air conditioning tubules that provide gaseous exchange at the cellular level. Now, vertebrates. Vertebrates also have surfaces of respiration. There are three main organs that they use in order to respire. First, external gills, which is basically the same as the one in the invertebrates. 2. Internal gills, rows of slits or pockets in fishes positioned at the back of the mouth, such that water entering the mouth can flow over them as it exits just behind the head. Now, fish have evolved to use these gills in a very effective and efficient way. They use a mechanism that helps them extract oxygen from water highly efficiently. This method is the counter current flow, wherein water flows over the gills and blood circulates through them in opposite directions. 3. Lungs, an internal respiratory surface shaped as a cavity or sac. Lungs provide a membrane for gaseous exchange, and since they are not in direct contact with all other body parts of the body, lungs require a circulatory system to transport gases to the rest of the body. These lungs are found in birds, reptiles, and mammals. Air moves by bulk into and out of the lung, and gases diffuse across the inner respiratory surfaces of the lungs. Pulmonary circulation allows the diffusion of dissolved gases across lung capillaries. In body tissues, oxygen diffuses from blood, interstitial fluid, then the cells. The pathway of carbon dioxide is in reverse. All lungs receive deoxygenated blood from the heart and return oxygenated blood to the heart. Vertebrates utilize a mechanism that invertebrates cannot, and that is actual breathing. Amphibians, birds, and mammals have evolved differently and use different ways of breathing in order to ventilate their body. Let's first discuss amphibians. Amphibians ventilate their lungs by positive pressure, breathing which forces air down the trachea. Birds use a system of air sacs as a blower to keep air flowing through the lungs in one direction only, preventing the mixing of incoming and outgoing air. Mammals ventilate their lungs by negative pressure breathing, which pulls air into the lungs when the volume of the lungs expands as the rib muscles and diaphragm contract. However, the incoming and outgoing air mix, decreasing the efficiency of ventilation. Humans are mammals and utilize this method. Aside from that, air enters or leaves the respiratory system through nasal cavities, where air is filtered by hair and cilia, warmed by blood vessels, and moistened with mucus. There are two important stages in the respiratory process. First is the oxygen transport, and second is the carbon dioxide transport. Oxygen transport is where oxygen diffuses down a pressure gradient from the lungs into the blood plasma, red blood cells, and binds to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin gives up its oxygen in tissues where partial pressure of oxygen is low, blood is warmer, partial pressure of carbon dioxide is higher, and pH is lower. These four conditions occur in tissues with high metabolism. Now, carbon dioxide transport. Carbon dioxide diffuses down its partial pressure gradient from the tissues into the blood plasma and red blood cells to the air in alveoli. 7% of the carbon dioxide is dissolved in plasma, 23% binds with hemoglobin, and 70% is in bicarbonate form. Bicarbonate and carbonic acid formation is enhanced by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, which is located in the red blood cells. Airflow and blood flow coordinate in order for the organism to work efficiently. Gas exchange in the alveoli is the most efficient when airflow equals the rate of blood flow. Local controls within the lungs correct imbalances in air and blood flow by constricting or dilating both bronchioles and arterioles. All of this respiration in vertebrates is controlled by one major system, the nervous system. The brain controls the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels by regulating the rate and depth of breathing. The brain also monitors the pH of the cerebrospinal fluid through sensors, reflecting carbon dioxide concentration in the blood. Secondary control is exerted by sensors in the aorta and carotid arteries that monitor blood levels of oxygen as well as carbon dioxide by blood speed. The planet we're living in is lively in many different ways. Everything on Earth is part of one whole system, meaning everything really is connected to everything else.
Our next focus will be on the transport and circulation in organisms. The transport system is one of the most important among the body processes because it enables other systems to function smoothly by supplying sufficient nutrients. Plants and animals have their own unique transport system. Plant transport involves two processes. The first process is the absorption of water through the roots together with the macronutrients and micronutrients by diffusion. Root hairs increase the surface area for transport. Water molecules pass through the epidermis, cortex, endodermis, and pericycle, and they move upwards by means of xylem vessels. The xylem is the specialized plant tissue that is responsible for carrying water and dissolved minerals taken in from the roots. The second process is the up and down movement of substances in phloem. Phloem cells transport substances such as products of photosynthesis, water, and other compounds up and down the plant body. Phloem tissues are adjacent to companion cells that give them support and nourishment. There are two major hypotheses on how substances can move up and down the plant body. These are, first, the ascent of xylem sap, where it is explained as a push from below by the water molecules gushing upwards through xylem vessels. It can also be described as pull from above by a combination of transpiration or evaporation of water from the plant body and cohesion of water molecules through hydrogen bonds. Second is the pressure flow or bulk flow, where it maintains the plant's source cell and a sink cell. A source cell is where photosynthesis occurs, and a sink cell is where the nutrients are needed. Leaf cells are definitely source cells. Sucrose and other substances accumulate in the source, and due to high concentration, they flow down or up where they are needed. Sink cells are growing parts of the plants, buds, flowers, fruits, root tips. In this way, phloem tissues carry materials down and up. Xylem lies adjacent to phloem tissues, and water may easily diffuse from xylem to phloem. We need to take note that the materials in plants are transported up and down the plant body by a combination of the actions of phloem and xylem cells. Let us now move on to animal circulatory system. Animals are more complex creatures and require more food and nutrients because they are able to move about. Nutrients, together with oxygen and water, are necessary for proper survival of the organism. Once nutrients are broken down by the digestive system and are absorbed, they need to be distributed to various organs and tissues in the body to replace energy being expended. Oxygen is also needed by the animal body for various cellular processes and activities. An animal's circulatory system is the main transport system in the body and is one of the keys that make all other bodily functions possible. An animal's circulatory system consists of the heart, blood vessels, arteries, veins, and capillaries, and the blood. The heart is the pump that pushes the blood to move along the arteries and veins. Blood from the heart and lungs usually passes through the arteries and carries with it oxygen and nutrients to be distributed into the many organs and cells via smaller blood vessels called capillaries. After distribution of these nutrients, the blood goes into the veins and takes with it waste products like carbon dioxide and other chemical wastes to be eliminated via the organs responsible for proper waste excretion. Animals have different circulatory system structures depending on which class it belongs to. Although they are different, its function remains the same. Let's take a look at this one. Fish have one atrium and one ventricle. Amphibians have two atria and one common ventricle where oxygenated and deoxygenated blood mix. In mammals and birds, there is a complete separation of the four chambers of the heart by a tissue called the septum.